2, 1.
So now we're going to be talking about a couple different types of transfers and how we actually do these techniques, not only to keep your patient safe, but to keep you safe. So obviously we know we would never be transferring a patient from a chair like this. We typically utilize our recliner chairs, but in good spirits, all of our patients are currently using them right now. So here, what we would always make sure we want to do is that all the chairs are locked if we had our regular chairs that we were working on with the patient. And again, we want to let physics help us mobilize patients. So if I'm trying to help Allie stand up, I'm going to first have her scoot to the edge of the chair. The reason that we do this is because the further back the patient's sitting, the longer the lever arm is for them to go to stand. If they sit closer to the edge, not only does momentum help them, but physics does because that lever arm is shorter. When helping her to stand as well, we also want to cue her on where her hand placement should be. If you start out not using an assistive device, you have two places that you could possibly stand depending on where the patient's injuries are. You always want to be on their weaker side, so we're going to pretend like Allie's weak side is her left side, and I have 2 foot placements I can do. I can either put a foot in here, so I can be in front to block her knee. Again, we don't want to go kneecap to kneecap, right? Allie's not going to like me very much if my bone touches her bone. But I can also put it so that the meatier part of my thigh helps with her knee. The other place I can also stand is to the side here, and I can still block her this way. Again, that's going to depend on your patient's injuries, your patient's body habitus, and to your comfort level of where you feel like you have the most stability. If we're standing up from the regular chair, I always want to cue Allie to have her hands on the firm surface. When we show you with a walker in a few minutes, we'll show you how that can change. But again, she always needs to be pushing up from the solid surface. From here, I can take one hand and put it underneath of her. Again, I'm not jamming it up into her armpit because I don't want to impinge her brachial plexus. My other hand can be on the other side if needed to cue her hip extensors. Your hip extensor is attached here in the middle of your butt, again, to your ischial tuberosity. The reason that we utilize those muscles to stand is those are our primary hip extensors. If we're able to cue the patient by pressing on their bottom, it can help them to stand up. This is something, though, that you want to educate your patients that you're doing beforehand just because of where you're touching them. If I don't need to help her, I can utilize her hip, or again, if she has any sort of shoulder injury, I can also bring my other arm around her front as to not hurt her shoulder. So I'm going to stand her up. Again, we want to use momentum. I cue her for her feet flat on the ground, her legs are back a little bit, and our main cue for her as a patient is her nose go over her toes. Again, let physics help you and make life easier. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, and she would stand up. Now I'm in a position that if she were to buckle, I could also prevent that by blocking her with my leg and then have her sit right back down if we were in an unsafe situation. Where I'm standing as a therapist, though, is equally as important. Everything we talked about up until now was to keep Allie safe. As a therapist, I want to make sure that I am in a little bit of a lunge position and a tiny bit of a mini squat. Reason being, whenever you're lifting patients, all that force is coming from your bottom and your legs in order to help a patient stand. You never want to be twisting your back. You never want to be hunched over because, again, that's going to impact your body mechanics. If Allie were to be standing up with a walker, it's pretty much the same concept, just a little bit different this time. She has 2 options for where her hands go now. She can continue to keep both of them on that stable surface, or one hand goes on the walker and one hand goes on the stable surface. Again, it wouldn't matter, it would be on her comfort level as to what she feels the best with. Obviously, from this point of view, you can't come in from the front like that. You're more so on the side here if she needed help. Again, though, my hand placement would still be the same. I would cue her to stand up in 3, 2, 1, and she would be able to stand up. If Allie, again, kind of lost her balance, I could pull her into me and then help her sit right back down so that she's nice and safe. So that's the sit to stand. From there, we go to our stand pivot transfer. So a stand pivot transfer might be for a patient who requires a little bit more assistance. With that, you want the chair angled with the patient's chair. Again, you want to create as minimal gap here as possible. If you're lucky enough to have a chair with removable armrests, you would want to utilize that first just so that, again, you have less surface to kind of transfer over. With that, I'm going to be more so in front of Allie. We're basically going to do that sit to stand, and then we do a pivot and help her to get into the chair. Again, these patients are more susceptible to buckling or collapsing, so you want to be positioned in order to help her to do that. So again, I cue her to scoot to the edge, both hands on the chair, I'm set up in that mini squat and lunge position, and then I can help her up. 1, 2, 3, and then she would go to the chair. On this side though, you're always transferring to the good side. So in this scenario that we just did, her bad side would actually be her right side. You always want to transfer to the better side for the patient so that they're at less susceptibility for falling. If she was even more assistance, so maybe a max assist, we could do what's called a squat pivot. So that's where the therapist is providing even more assistance. So for that, I'm in even more of a lunge position. I also want to be in a place where if both of her knees buckled, I can help her. This one, I would have her rock to this side. I would get my hand underneath her bottom. Again, I would always let the patient know I'm going to do that beforehand. Then she would rock to the other side. Same thing, both hands are under. Now, the one thing that patients are always going to want to do is grab around your neck, right? They're always going to want to feel that thing of comfort. You want to make sure a patient doesn't do that as to not strangle you in any sort of a way. So for there, you can have them grab onto your arm or grab onto your waist, but never your neck. The other thing that we're using physics here again. We're using that head-hips relationship. So in physics, your head and your hips move in opposite directions. So if I want Allie's hips to go towards the right, I need her head over my shoulder towards the left. Again, just makes this transfer a lot easier and it makes your body mechanics better. You see as I do this, I'm going to have a flat back, I'm going to have my knees bent, and I'm not going to be twisting my back at all as I plop her into the chair. All right, ready? So you're gonna go either side. On the count of 3, 1, 2, and 3. Again, these transfers are very difficult to do when you do have an armrest, so this is more advantageous to do from a wheelchair or something like that where you can remove the armrest. There are other different types of transfers that we use. Those are the most common for just getting a patient to and from a chair or getting them ready to ambulate. We also have lateral transfers that you'll take a patient from a bed to a stretcher or vice versa. This can be between anywhere from like 2 to 6 people. Again, depends on the patient's injuries and their body habitus. Typically with that transfer, you will have people on either side. You will move the patient over towards the edge of the bed and then do one more transfer to the actual bed. You will have someone leading and calling that transfer so that everyone's mobilizing at the same time. The last type of transfer that we do is called the T transfer. So if you think about a bed, a patient would be in an L position, and then what we would do is we would turn them. Again, this can be done with anywhere from 3 to 6 people, depending on how many you need. If this were the bed right here, you would have the chair perpendicular, patients in an L position, we turn them that way so their feet would be facing you. And then what we would do is we'll have Allie stand up. So Allie would be a therapist. Our patient's bottom would be here, legs would be here. Allie and I would be crisscrossed behind them holding the chuck and or that patient's ischial tuberosities. And then we would have someone guiding their legs. Again, depending if they had 1 or 2 leg injuries, you would need 1 to 2 people. From there, we would take the patient with the chuck in this hand and the chuck here. We would take them to the very edge of the bed. We would regroup, make sure the patient's okay, and then we do one more heave-ho to the back of the chair. From there, you would slowly pull the chair out, making sure that the legs are all steady as we do that. And the other biggest thing too is that you want the bed just slightly higher than the chair so you're going down, not up, to mobilize the patient. So again, these are just some of the transfers that we utilize every day and that you guys will see on the floors. We're happy to again go over all of these in more detail with you in person.